The Hawks have got their mid-season bye, and it's time to hand out some grades. The Dazzers College of Hawthorn fandom. That's what we're going with here. I'm going to go through and give every Hawthorn player that has played at least one senior game at the Hawks a grade. Not an NA, not a TBC. Nope, they are getting a grade. Now, heads up, Hawthorn have played 33 players so far this season. So that means there are going to be 33 grades handed out. You are not going to agree with all 33 of them. Okay? So as long as we all understand that going in, we're going to be on the same page. But you need to let me know what you agree with and what you disagree with in the comments below. And also, the reason why I ask you to click the like button all the time, guys, is every time you click that, the little thumb, it means someone else can see the video, which helps me out a lot. So please, before we hit the intro, just click that like button because you're already here. I appreciate you, and I thank you. Let's do this. Harry's definitely played some more defensive wing roles this season compared to his last 30-odd games, where it's definitely been more of an attacking wing role. And look, his first game was in the back end of 2017, and he still hasn't played a lot of games. The consistency in the last 18 months has been really good. But in terms of this year, he's averaging less than 15 meters gained per disposal, which for your winger is not exactly what you want in terms of ball movement. I'm not allowing recency bias to kick in here, but Dan Curtin just killed him on the weekend. In the air, of course, Curtin 4 contested marks was great. The problem that we're sort of seeing with Harry a little bit is that without the footy, he's becoming a little bit of a problem for mine. I'm noting that the Hawks, when they are getting exposed on ball movement and in transition, he is one of those players that are struggling to contain the opposition, and just think as an off-ball winger, he maybe isn't as strong as some other wingers in the competition. It's definitely not a failing grade or anything like that, but I do think that the Hawks' outside run that was so prevalent in the last half of last season is lacking a little bit. I know it's nitpicky here, but I'm going to go through and give Harry a C-. Jai's been in a pretty unlucky position this year because he is our number 2 midfielder and has been forced into being the number 1 with Will Day's injury history, of course, established last year and going into this year, averaging less than 24 disposals for a number 1 mid in a hopefully contending team. He's not exactly what you want. His tackle clearances numbers, his score involvement numbers are all fantastic, and you just wonder how good are those numbers going to look if he could grab those extra 3 or 4 disposals. If that 23.5, say, became 27.5, then you are looking at a premier midfielder in the competition. Unfortunately, that is not what we have got for the majority of the year. For what he's been asked to do, though, I think he's applied himself really well. Here's a guy that never quits. Every kick off his boot is a tracer bullet, which if it's going 55, that's great. If it's going 25, not so much. But he has stood strong in a midfield that has been monstered a couple of times, and he is standing strong with getting more opposition time into him. Overall, I'm not being harsh on Jai. I just don't know if he's a number 1 midfielder. Could he be one of the better number 2 mids in the competition? Now you're sort of getting into that area. But so far, this year, I'm going to go ahead and give the Duke a B+. Last year, it was Jack Scrimshaw who was our best two-way defender, and this season it looks like that it is Jars. His ability to not only lock down on an opponent, win his defensive one-on-ones, but also find the ball and get it back for the Hawks, has been an unbelievable strong suit for the former power player. Averaging 17 disposals and not getting beaten a whole lot. I think he has been the underrated star from a media point of view. I'm pretty sure all of the Hawthorn fans know how good he has been, but I feel like this grade is going to be higher than some of you may expect. I love what he's been able to do. That athletic prowess is fantastic. As much as I love him, though, the kick to Connor McDonald against the Crows was not on purpose, but we'll take it. Goal assist, absolutely brilliant. But in terms of what he's been able to do in the air, on the ground, offensively, defensively, I am going to give our number 4 an A-. Honestly, I think this year and moving forward, the next evolution of footy is the hacker kick midfielder is just about dead. And unfortunately, that is kind of where we're at with Jimmy. 20 disposals at 47% kicking efficiency is just not going to get the job done in any way. Now, his tackle and clearance numbers are great. I'm not denying that as a defensively minded midfielder, there could be a spot there for him, but it's obvious the Hawks have offered him a 2 or a 4-year deal on not a lot of coin. He's clearly going to be an insurance player moving forward, and that just is what it is. But him and Connor Nash together right now is not working, just blatantly out not working, which is a bit of a problem. Because when you've got a guy who can win the contested ball like he can, you're also looking at guys like Darcy Parish, Matt Crouch, these kinds of guys. Whereas a guy like Lachie Neale, whilst he can accumulate and he's not known as an elite kick, his hands, his awareness, and his work rate stand out. Whereas those things with Jimmy so far in his 10 games are not standing out so much. 20 disposals, if you are going to have that a game, and that's still fine to have, your impact per possession needs to be high. And for Jimmy, that is just not the case at the moment, which is a real shame because we are talking about a best and fairest winner here. And is this going to prove how harsh of a marker I am? Potentially. But I don't think I can give Jimmy a passing grade here. I'm actually going to go ahead and give him a D. Now, I said recency bias shouldn't be taken into account, but we're 2 for 2 in the games that Sis has missed, which is not great for him. But also looking through his stats, 6 marks a game, and this is why I say recency bias is a big thing. But I watched his last 2 lineups, these last 2 games, I should say. And yeah, 6 marks seems impossible. 6.7 intercepts. Okay, sure, we'll go with it. That's absolutely fine. 357 meters gained, 19 disposals. He's clearly not at his best. Whether you think it's a massive cohesion problem with Battle and Barras against the better sides, which is a decent thing to look at, but it's not as if the Hawks have had the easiest run. People are going to point out that they had Richmond, they had North, I think we had Melbourne in there, like close together. But in terms of last year on the ladder and this year on the ladder, it's not as if the Hawks' first 6 or so weeks were peachy either. These are all things that are getting taken into account. Overall, though, the captain is in horrific form. We handled his injury seemingly, optically, really badly. It's just a real shame, and my fingers are crossed that he comes back against North, finds some really good form, and is able to not play the swingman role. If he is going to be a defender, we need to just keep him down there and stuff the consequences. Or we need to keep him forward, which a lot of fans will be calling for. But can we put up with a lack of pressure from him and Gunston inside the forward 50? Well, now you're bringing in other problems. Overall, if you're going to go through an identity crisis, it's not great that it's happening with the captain. And unfortunately, and with those numbers, this probably goes with how high I do rate Sis. I can only give him a D+, I'm afraid. And to think there were track watchers that were trying to tell me that Ned Reeves and Lloyd Meek for the number 1 ruck spot was actually a battle. It was not. So, Ned, look, he's played 1 game. He is a backup ruck. But let's be honest, as soon as the ball hits the ground, he just doesn't offer anything, which is a real shame in terms of the height and that hit out to advantage ability. Now, in his 1 game, yes, it was against the Suns, but 34 hit outs, 7 hit outs to advantage. That's about 1 in every 5. Like, Lloyd's hit out to advantage numbers are actually better. So his 1 wood is actually not a 1 wood anymore for the sake of the team. I would find it really hard to believe that he is on the list next year. If another club comes calling, which again would be really weird because not many teams are going to run a true ruck situation where one of them just doesn't have a secondary spot on the ground. So unless another club wants him as insurance, sure. But overall, I just don't think Ned's style is suited to the way the modern AFL is played, unfortunately. So it is a D for me, which sounds harsh, like he did well, I suppose, to break in and cement himself against Ramsden originally coming in for the game against Gold Coast, but it's a D for me. Sorry, Ned. Frosty was chased by a couple of clubs in the off-season, most notably the Sydney and St Kilda franchises, if you want to go down that path, or clubs, because we are in Australia, Daz. He's only played 2 games. Frosty, he had 8 disposals, and I think he was sub both times, 1 time. Off the top of my head, they were very early on in the season. So in terms of his on-field performance, it's not going to be that high grade, but in terms of what he is insurance-wise, I don't really think I can fail him for this because it's not as if he has had to, kind of like the player before him, try to find new strings to his bow or new arrows in his quiver, if you will. Frosty is what he is, and as soon as an injury goes down, he's probably going to step in there. Also, interesting to note that in the VFL last week, he kicked 3 as a forward. I don't think that's what he's going to be if he comes back to the AFL side, but there you go. So, overall, in terms of being that insurance piece, I can't really fail him. I'm not going to. So, C+ for Frosty. If the Hawks play in the finals, and look, there is a chance that does not happen, I'm not trying to jinx anything here, CJ needs to be the sub. He is, I think, the prototypical player to have as a sub. The burst, the energy, the flexibility. He is able to roll off halfback. He is able to play on a wing. If you take out, Lloyd Meek, for example, or a tall forward, well, even then we could probably send Sicily forward and CJ can stay back. He can help cover for nearly anyone that gets subbed out. Therefore, play him as sub just all the time. I think it's a fantastic way to go about this, and yes, it might cost Luke Bruce some games at the end of the season, but I don't think there is a downside here at all. He is not only impossible to chase down at the start of a game, 3.5 quarters in when everyone else is absolutely knackered, good luck. The spark that he gave against the Crows was fantastic. He's been a sub a couple of times as well, and I think he has applied himself really well. Now, the longer games that he has played, he is still getting exposed a little bit more defensively than I would like. Still a passing grade for him, though. I would like to see him evolve as this piece, as this substitute piece, and go from there. It is a C for CJ, but in terms of guys that I think that could be on a real upward trajectory come the rest of the year, he would almost be top of the list. Carl has been our best distributor by far, bar none, in 2025. He's been fantastic. I've loved everything that he has done. Shout out to Smithy because Carl Amon is his man. Back when he was at Port, Smithy came to me, and this would have been a year and a half before we actually got him, that said if he was the Hawks, he would jump on a plane, get to Alberton, I should say, and go get Carl. And it happened because we were fighting with St Kilda and he had a family connection at the Saints. Still came to the Hawks. Smithy has been paid handsomely, and the Hawks, of course, are the major beneficiaries of it as well. Averaging the aforementioned 23 disposals, nearly 600 meters gained. And I just think ball in hand, it feels really safe with Carl, which is fantastic. And lo and behold, here we are, the man that wears number 10, the first A+. I have nothing but glowing endorsements to give to Carl at the moment. I love what he is able to do. I love him as the kick-out merchant without Sis there. There's nothing but love for Carl right now. I think for what he is, what we want and what we need him to be, he is fulfilling that role brilliantly, and he's in the top 5 for the MVP as well. A big-bodied defensive midfielder, well, we had one of them that went to Collingwood. We stuck with the Irishman. And look, I'm not saying that's the right or wrong decision, but I 100% understand what Sam wants out of that role. And for the most part, Connor has delivered on that. Look, there are times where he's never going to be the one that's going to break the game open. He's never going to be the one that's going to deliver on a spark. And he's very rarely going to be the guy that is going to reverse momentum. But when things are humming, he is a piece to add to that. And I think he is a guy as well that is more important to the CBAs than we think. The Hawks got monstered in the midfield a couple of times when he was suspended. So, look, as much as I'm sort of wondering why the 4-year deal came across, and maybe I'm thinking, he might be the first out if we can nail a Butters or a Harley Reid or someone like that, of that ilk, that would be really cool to see. And he would probably be the guy to obviously go out because you've got Day, you've got Newcomb. I think we're going to stick with Ward in there and you add Butters or Reid to that mix. Of course, Nash is the one that probably becomes insurance, you would think, even though Harley wouldn't be a fully fledged midfielder for the Hawks early. Anyway, 19 pressure acts, a few clearances, 6 tackles, which the Hawks need, of course, one of the barometers for us playing well. I'm going to give Connor a C+. At halftime in opening round, Will was the Brownlow medal winner. By that far, it wasn't funny. Now, obviously, things have changed since then. The injuries kicked in. He's only played the 4 games this year so far. And look, injuries ravaging a player probably means that you can't give them a passing grade or anything like that. And I'm not going to because it stinks. It sucks. It is what it is. 23 disposals, 5.3 clearances, 7.3 score involvements, 1.3 goals. Now, if you're wondering, well, am I being really glowing towards Will, whereas those numbers are relatively similar, probably without the scoreboard impact of Jai, and Jai got a B+. What Will's been able to do in terms of around the ground, he is our number one midfielder. Do I still think fully fit he needs to get to that 27, 28 disposal mark? Yeah, I do, because you just can't win games of footy. Like, you look at the teams that are up the top of the ladder, like Collingwood, Nick Dacos having 30 is so damaging. Geelong, Holmes and Smith are so damaging. Neil, McCluggage, Ashcroft, Dunkley, these guys having those 28, 30 disposals, impact per possession is so high. That's what Will can do. So that number will need to go up. The injury was making me think, do I give him a passing grade? Does the impact that he had during those games, do we kind of give some leniency there? I settled on D+. Don't hate me, Will. I still love you. Now, I'm never going to hide my love for Dylan Moore, my favourite current Hawk on the list, but I'm also not against understanding or identifying the fact that he has been out of form compared to last year. Now, if we're expecting him to be at an All-Australian level every season, we might be overdoing it a bit, but I also recognise that there have been times, well, last year during the final series, and there have been some games this year where he has simply gone missing, not gotten as involved as much. Now, granted, he has turned it around, and if you had said to me as a high half forward, you'd be averaging just over 17.5 disposals, 5 score involvements, those mark and ground ball gets numbers, would you take that? Absolutely. Context is important. So I'm obviously not going to go crazy here with Dill. I'm also not going to knock him as much as I've seen other fans do. I'm not saying recency bias is a part of the conversation here. He has been better in that leadership role, and he, I think, more than nearly anyone else, and I can say that because Sis wasn't here, who is going to lead the way in terms of how that front six move. So he, Ginnivan, Watson, McDonald, Chol even, that front six having pressure either in that front half or up the ground is more predicated on him than anyone else. And he has been a reason why the Hawks have gotten a couple of wins against two very good teams in the last fortnight. You put all that into the blender, and for me, it spits out a B-. With the media scrutinising James Sicily's form, Scrimmer's lack of form has kind of gone under the radar a little bit. Now, he's had concussion problems, but the suspension was his fault and a silly thing to do, regardless if you think the suspension was too long or not. Personally, I didn't really have a problem with it. You concussed a player in that way, 3 weeks, I was fine with it, to be honest. Does the rule need an overhaul? Well, yes, but for the rule that is in place, that was deserved. I don't think there's any arguing that. But only 164 metres gained. He's not really playing as a tall defender. He's not really playing as a rebounder. He really is the defender that's going through the bigger identity crisis. Not form crisis, like Sis, the identity crisis, sort of an existentialistic crisis for Scrimmer, if you will. How many times can you say the word crisis in one man's analysis? I'm not really sure. But only 5 intercepts, but the disposal numbers are down. And again, hammy tightness or hammy awareness. And look, I'm 27. I've been aware of my hammies for a very long time. Hasn't kept me out of work. That's tongue-in-cheek, guys, by the way. But it's been an unfortunate run here for Scrim. I kind of have to give him a D+ here and hope that we can find a role, form, and continuity with his body to get him right for the finals, because he would have a big part to play. I think he's our Ben Stratton, to be honest. Dimmer, is he a forward? Is he a back? Well, it's hard to say. He was runner-up in the best and fairest twice as a defender. In the last 4 seasons, he is top 12 in the competition for not losing one-on-one contests. Hard to say, but he kicked a couple of bags when he went forward last year, so let's just swing him around and not use him properly. This has been annoying, because that's what Dimmer is. He is a defender. He kicked more goals in the TAC Cup in the year he was drafted than anyone else. I know that. Josh Weddle was the All-Australian fullback in his draft year. He's played fullback once in his career, and that was on Charlie Curnow, and we shut that shit down real quick. So, look, Dimmer just needs to stay back. He really does. He is a general down there. I'm not saying that because he's the number 15, but in terms of our small defenders, he is the guy, along with Jars, that is just able to set up so many things for us. So just keep him back. This is not his fault that there's been a little dip in form at times. for what he's been able to do, the roles that he has been asked to play, and the grace and skill that he has gone about it, I'm giving him a C-. I think this is more on everyone but Dimmer screwing him up this year. Massimo's numbers look really good as a winger, and that is lovely. We love to see it. However, I have some concerns. And the biggest concern for mine is his kick. Now, he's a beautiful kick. I'm not denying that for a moment. However, I am noticing that in his field kicking, he is swerving to the side more and more. From a more conventional Carl Amon-esque type of kick that I remember seeing last year, there is starting to be a little bit of Matty Suckling in his style, and it is pretty much putting him off by 2 meters. It is either 2 meters above the leading forward's head, or he's kicking it at their shoelaces. And it's happening more times than you think. He's always wanting to go boundary side, which as a winger makes sense, especially as a left footer on the non-broadcast sides, the other side of the ground. But sometimes it feels really unnecessary. And look, if he's kicking under 30 meters, he's still a dagger. He's still a part of our overlap transition run. But I don't actually feel as safe with him, say, kicking inside 50 as much as I was last year. This is a guy who, don't forget, the media wanted to tell us, and I don't think wrongly, by the way, that he was worthy of an All-Australian squad selection as one of the top 3 wingers in the comp. Now, is that still the same now? I'd say probably not. Has he been bad this year? Absolutely not. I am going to go ahead and give Mass a B-. Still down on last year, though. Reckon he can get it back. Double-digit hitouts to advantage and nearly 4 tackles a game is genuinely batshit coming from your ruckman just quietly, but Lloyd has been fantastic. I don't think there's any new analysis that I can bring to the Lloyd Meek conversation that anyone that actually watches the Hawks is already seeing. Now, did Nathan Brown go a little bit too early in his Lloyd Meek is the best ruckman in the game conversation? Yeah, he did. We can just be honest about that. But let's be real. Nathan Brown's opinions are iffy at best for a lot of reasons. But Lloyd at the moment, look, in terms of the best ruckman in the comp, Sherry and Gawn in whichever order you want to put them in. Darcy Cameron has been great this year, but is Lloyd a part of that conversation as well for that roundabout, that 3rd spot? Yeah, he is. I know Riley O'Brien beat him on the weekend. You could argue it's the only game he's lost this year. So don't let that Adelaide game fool you. Lloyd's been amazing, and I've gone ahead and I've given him an A-. I think he's been fantastic. Speaking of barometers, hello, Mabs. Now, here's the guy that a lot of Hawthorn fans want to jump on really early. Now, I'll be honest, there have been games this year where I have been critical of Mabs. I am not going to hide away from that for a moment. What I do recognize, though, is there is a difference between I wish there was more versus he's useless. And I will never be a part of that conversation, right? It is always, I wish more could happen. And part of it is not his fault. He is not a number 1 forward. This is a guy that has not kicked 45 plus in a year once. He's averaging 1.8 goals a game this year as well, which means he's not going to get to that either. But we're missing Lewis, we're missing Dia, we are missing guys that should be overtaking his role. He's winning 40% of his hitouts, by the way, which is a second ruckman you will take every single time. So effectively, he, as our second tall forward, is not being asked to do that. He's asked to be our backup ruck number 1 forward, which is just nuts that he is still pulling it off in a way that the Hawks are still a top 3 team for scoring when they lose and still a decent scoring team when we win as well. He has been a part of that. I think he is underrated by a lot of Hawthorn fans. Yes, his pressure is always going to be the barometer for him, and his chase downs in the last month or so have been fantastic. The Hawks traditionally have not been one of the better teams at retaining the ball inside 50. We had a little bit of a dip. But in fact, this year, as compared to last year, we have been a top 5 team for retaining the ball inside 50 for all but 2 weeks, where we've been ranked inside the top 5. That's a credit to him as well, because pressure smalls are good, pressure talls are great. Mabs, it's a B+ from me. So, what do me, Smithy, Lauren from Talking Hawks, and my partner have in common? Well, apart from the fact that we all think that I'm awesome, I can't even say that with a straight face. Anyway, the thing that us four have in common is that we are all fighting for the #1 Jack Gunston fan title. Now, I think the two people that have got the best arguments are Smithy and I. And I would tell you that he probably has a better case because of the identification of his talent at Adelaide, but I'm not going to give him that satisfaction. It's game on. And look, my missus loves him for two reasons. One, because he can actually accurately kick the ball, something her North Melbourne team has not been able to do for a lot of the time that she has been a North Melbourne supporter. And two, he's good looking. Now, I can't really argue with either of those points, but Jack's mind, back off. Who had Gunners for 8 weeks this year being ranked #1 for average goals? Anyone have that on their bingo card? You dirty little liar. No, you didn't. We could not have asked any more from Jack on what he's delivered. He should have been our insurance forward. It should have been Deer and Chol. And if we needed Gunners for lineup purposes, plug him in there. Maybe he would have been the sub 7 or 8 times. Nope, 2.5 goals a game. It's an A+ for the old boy. So I was reading a book recently, and I promise you this is going to make sense, but there was a moment in the book, John Maher's book it was, where a character in this book didn't know what they were going to do next, right? They were one thing. They were one job, one career. That was basically their entire identity, and they said that they wanted to change things up. And they went, and another character said, how do you feel about that? And the main character said that without having this career, I don't know who I am. The worst thing, though, is I don't know what I am, and that's what scares me. And that little passage is Finn McGuinness, because he's not being used as a tagger. So what is he? Because 14 disposals a game, 4 score involvements, 4 ground ball gets, 3 marks, all of those things sound great. He doesn't quite have the skills by foot to be a damaging high half forward. He doesn't have the tall forward craft or the size. I'm just struggling to see the identity of where Finn fits into this side, to be honest. Now, could some matchups work if we wanted to go the hard tag? I mean, yeah, but we haven't really done that to start games. So overall, I'm not sure he's having the non-tagging impact that we want. I'm not sure that we want to use him as a tagger to disrupt the midfield mix. So overall, I'm not really sure what to do with Finn all that much. I've kind of got to give it a D+, and part of it's not really his fault either. Might be a little bit harsh. Punky's obviously in the twilight of his career at the moment. He's only played a handful of games. Half of his disposals have become scores. He's averaging just over half a goal a game. And that's kind of what we needed from him, to be honest. 3 goals, 5 games. Been sub once or twice, I think. But overall, in terms of what he is, he's just going to be our insurance guy. He's probably going to be sub if he ever comes back. He's probably not going to play another handful of games, you would think. Knock on wood that there's no rig injuries to our small forwards. But in terms of what we've asked from him, I don't know if we could have asked for much more, to be honest. But he is what he is now. He's a veteran backup small forward who is always going to be clever enough to deliver a couple of moments for us per game. So a C- for Punky. It's a bit boring, this analysis. I apologize for it, but that's what we're getting from Punky at the moment. Geez, the number 23 looks good with a mullet again. I'm telling you, it looks so good. Anyway, the Wedler. Now, if we don't land a midfielder in this draft, I would love if the entirety of the next preseason was Weddle the midfielder, to be honest, because he's kind of gone the reverse Sean Burgoyne path, where Berg was, well, Silk, to be honest, not Berg, was a midfielder at Port Adelaide, and a bloody good one at that, don't get me wrong. Before he went to Hawthorn and effectively became the bits and pieces player, usually down back, sometimes through the midfield, a little bit of wing as his career got a little bit more on. Whereas Weddle has done the whole, well, we're going to kind of stick him where we can and figure it out later because his athletic profile allows for that. But I would love if we brought that to the midfield. I really would. If you've got, well, Day and him together, could that work? Who knows? But if you do nail, say, a Harley Reid in the offseason, I just think having the brute of Harley with Jai and Weddle in there would just be extraordinary. Although, probably unlikely. I would still love to see it, though. What he's able to do, though, with ball in hand, he is the most exciting Hawk to watch. I think there has barely been a game this year that he hasn't delivered something special, magical. He is our X factor in a massive way. I've loved everything that the Wedler has done, and he's a bloody good bloke as well. Not that affects his grading at all, but he is the third Hawk so far, or the fourth Hawk, I should say, so far, to receive a very high grade. I think I'm going to give Josh Weddle an A. Considering we also got Barris and we didn't have to give up any draft capital for Josh, I feel like he's gone under the radar a little bit. And I still think that's the case on field. He just does enough right. Now, there have been times in open play where he has been exposed a little bit. Now, I think that has been Hawthorn's lack of pressure, to be honest, because the games in which we are applying pressure, that whole back six, maybe without Sis, unfortunately, just looks so cohesive. I think he's been fantastic, to be honest. Another guy just quietly slipping under the radar. 18 and a half disposals is already crazy. Nearly 6 intercepts, 5.5 marks, and 5.5 defensive pressure acts. He has been perfect for what we brought him to the club for. And I don't want to hear about this overpaid crap because A, fans don't pay players, and B, has he been a bad pickup? No, he's worth the coin. In fact, so much so, and I've loved everything that he has done, I'm giving him an A-, which I feel like some people are going to think is a higher grade than he deserves. I'll fight you on this. I don't care. He's been awesome. Joshy boy, have I doubted you. However, you have proven me wrong in quite a few instances, which, by the way, I am thrilled about. I don't understand anyone that hates being wrong, right? Because if you are wrong, A, it means you've learned something, and B, we do have the right, the option, and the ability to change our opinions on a whim, right? I don't understand anyone that doesn't think that way, right? I love being proven wrong on something because I get to learn shit. It's great. Now, 21.8 disposals, 3.5 clearances, 5.5 ground ball gets, 5 score involvements, all look really good. What I do know for sure and for certain is he is our safest kick inside 50, which is extraordinary and something I would not have told you last year in the slightest. 13 games, his game is going to another level, which is great. Now, on ball, with the ball, big tick. I still worry without the ball in terms of tackling, pressure. I don't think there's a Hawk this year that's missed more tackles than Josh has. Am I going to hold that against him? Well, a little bit, but not in a way that's going to make you go, Dad's he getting ridiculous now, right? It's probably, with the ball, you can convince me on an A or A-. Without the ball, yeah, C-ish. I will give him credit for proving me wrong as well, so I'll meet in the middle and I'll give him a B+. I'm loving what I'm seeing, and I hope it can continue. Give me a preseason in the gym to get him stronger so he can hold those tackles, and I'm very happy. Over to Frenchie now, and look, I've been right about Frenchie, I've been wrong about Frenchie, I've been half right, half wrong, I've been confused about Frenchie, and after 9 games that he's played this year, I am still no closer to finding out what the hell he is. His time on ground is not high enough, which could be a him problem with his aerobic capacity, by the way. There are too many times where he's just not in the contest. There are so many times with ball in hand, he does things that are unbelievable. And I don't really know where to go from here. His VFL numbers are never awe-inspiring. It's never like, oh, we have got to get this boy back into the VFL. It doesn't seem like it. Sure, there could be exceptions to the rule, but it's not an overwhelming feeling. And look, I'm kind of getting annoyed with the whole he's Sam Mitchell Jr. I understand where that comes from, the jumper number, the blonde locks, the way he's swiveling his hips and all that. The numbers aren't translating. Like, this is a 17 disposal, 5 ground ball get, and weirdly, I know this would have seemed impossible at the start of the year, it's Josh Ward that's now getting more criticised than Frenchie is. Now, I don't think either of them are deserving to be ultimately bagged at the end of the day, but we can all accept now that Ward's ahead of him, as he should be, 12 months earlier in terms of getting drafted. But that's sort of where we're at. Cam Mackenzie right now is probably our 6th best midfielder. I don't know how good that is. In terms of what he could be, what he is, what he isn't, my head was spinning, so I've given him a C. How bloody good is it to see Sammy Butler back? My God, Alfred is playing really good footy. And we love that. The fact that he came back through the VFL and was actually played in the midfield, massive tick. The fact that he came back into the AFL and against my pessimism was actually played in the midfield, love it. His tackling has been awesome. And one of the big reasons why we've been able to get our tackle numbers back up to scratch, averaging 17 disposals as well, which for what he is and what we've needed him to be, has been fantastic. Now, I would love to just go ahead and go, the story's so good, the output's so good, it's automatically an A+. I have to be honest, though, is it's not as if he's been, say, taking the exam for the entire year. So if A- sounds harsh to you, I can understand that. If this could have been another 3 or 4 games, probably, I would have elevated it to the A+. But I bloody love this story. I love Sam Butler, and I hope he stays in the side for as long as he can. On to C-Mac now, and honestly, the drop-off hasn't been as big as some have claimed, and I think he's had some really bad moments this year, but the form hasn't been as sort of awful as I think I can be from a reactionary point of view. Now, I've always said that our 4 small forwards, in terms of how they can operate up the field, work like a chain. Dylan Moore can get all the way back to inside the opponent's forward 50 and still operate at a high level. I've always said that Jack Inovan can work his way up the ground to sort of the half back line in order to get involved and get some touches. I've always thought that Connor McDonald can play that wing half forward role of the chain, and the Wizard operates the best inside forward 50. Now, all 4 of those are interchangeable, and I definitely think the Wiz getting more centre bounces against the Crows was really cool to see. But I think what's turned Connor's season around has been his ability to stay on that forward 52 wing place, apply pressure and hurt the opposition going the other way. He is a player you still need to put time into, and although he hasn't quite reached the B to A- levels of last year, I am not hitting the panic button on Croc at all. I would love those disposal numbers to hit up towards that 17 mark like Moore and Guinea, but overall I'm going to be giving Croc a B-. I read a really interesting article that NASA will not hire astronauts with a perfect record. They do not want to send people in space that have never gone through trials, tribulations, or bounced back from negative outcomes. And you know what? Jack had to go through that. He got dropped. He got sent to the VFL. The social media backlash was excessive. And how has he responded? By taking the absolute piss. He's averaging 17 disposals this year, 1.2 goals, 5.6 score involvements, and 13 pressure acts. The guy who was called a downhill skier at Collingwood has fairly and squarely put that behind him. If you're a Hawthorn fan and you're not on the Guinea bandwagon, you're just a hater at this point. I don't know what else to tell you. And if you're not a Hawthorn supporter and you still hate Guinea, good luck to you. I'm not really about that, but good luck to you anyway. He's been a star, a genuine star since coming back. I've loved everything about it. You add the storyline, you add the goal celebration, which was the most overreacted piece of garbage I think I've seen this year. And that's got a lot of contenders for that coveted prize, let me tell you. But I'm giving Guinea an A-. He's been awesome, and I'm pumped to see what he can do for the rest of the year. It's really starting to annoy me from non-Hawthorn fans, I should say, that criticise Nick Watson for A, a nickname he didn't come up with himself, and B, having a personality when he's not the overwhelming number 1 player in the game. Does my head in. However, what I will say in terms of the improvement for the Wiz is that he's not averaging 11 disposals yet, which I think needs to go up. If he can get around that 13-14 mark, especially when about 45% of his disposals end up in scores, the Hawks are going to be the big beneficiaries of it. I liked the CBA addition in the game against the Crows. I think that's something that the Hawks can continue with, absolutely. And I really hope that can happen even against teams like North and those that we've got moving forward, even though our draw is going to get more and more difficult. I don't want us to shy away from that in the slightest. He is a burst player. He probably does need to improve on his aerobic capacity, but he's young. He's still going to get that done. I don't think he's done a whole lot wrong this year, to be honest. The set shot goal kicking can still be improved, but for what he is and what he needs to do, he's not doing a lot wrong. And all time, his scoring shot numbers are comparable to some of the best small forwards of all time, which is something not a lot of people want to hear, but I don't really give a damn. Numbers are numbers. I'm giving the Wizard a B-. Unfortunately, Cal's only played the 1 game and he got dropped. The conditions did not suit him in the slightest in order to get the job done. But Fingers crossed we can see him back in the AFL as quickly as possible because he really was an X-factor weapon for us last year. Can he still contribute in the back half of the season? Absolutely he can, but unfortunately, fully fit, could only survive a week back in the side. His VFL form's not exactly up to scratch. Unfortunately, it's a dear D for this one, but in terms of guys that can turn it around, I'm confident that he can. 2/3 of Tommy's disposals have come via intercepts. The fact that the Hawks have been able to, with 2 key additions in the off-season, not regress in terms of the amount of scores that they are conceding. The Hawks are conceding the exact same amount this year that they were last year. And you might be thinking to yourself, hang on, they haven't made it better though, Daz. Where are you going with this? Well, our conceding scores from turnover have gone through the roof. And that is not the defense's fault, unless, of course, you're getting forward half intercepts. If someone was turning the ball over inside defensive 50, well, then you're going to have a problem, something James Sicily has done quite a lot this year. However, our scores from clearance, so 666, are improved. Our scores from defensive chains have been improved. Our ability to set up behind the ball has improved. He has been a part of that. I do not understand, but he's a bit slow. Yeah, he is. So was Brian Lake. Like, they're different players, but why are we going after Tommy? Well, he doesn't have much of a turning circle. You don't need your full back to be your best kick. James Frawley won a flag. He wasn't that big of a kick either. And let's be honest, we didn't give up what I thought we were going to give up for him, so he's cheaper than I thought he was going to be, delivering on everything I wanted him to deliver on. I have no complaints with what Tommy's brought to the table at this point in time. He doesn't try to do too much. He knows what he is, and he has better footy IQ than you give him credit for. I'm giving him an A-. Not many people are going to agree with that, I don't think, but it is what it is. In terms of structure, I get why Rama is in the side and what he's delivering as a foil for Mabior Chol. He rarely gets outmarked. He's clean below his knees. I know that. Unfortunately, the hand and foot skills just are not there at this point. Now, are they ever going to get there? I have no idea, but I just think there have been too many times. Yes, we're 2-0 with him in the side. I understand all those kinds of things, but I am struggling to wrap my head around just where that next level is going to come from. He's not kicking set shots, which stinks, and there seems to be a liability aspect with him with ball in hand, which is a real shame because the raw traits and attributes are really exciting. I'm giving Rama a D. I can't see how it's a passing grade when it's just not there, and I'm not sure if it's going to be, unfortunately. Other clubs are apparently going to be inquiring about him. I would be listening. A hard defense to break into, I understand that, but it looks like Seamus is going to be one of those guys who is a really good VFL player, but not cracking into the AFL. Now, with good news around that is Ned Long was exactly the same, and he has found a niche at Collingwood. So could he find a niche somewhere else? Probably, and that's fine. Not every player is suited to every system, but I just don't think it's happening. His one-on-one bodywork in the AFL is just, it's stronger than, he's definitely not disgusting at that aspect of the game, but his ball use at times has not been great. 4.5 tackles is really good for a defender. 3.5 intercepts is reasonably good as well, but I just don't see it long term, to be completely honest, which kind of stinks. It's a D for me for Seamus, and I wish him all the best for next year, whether it is at the Hawks or, of course, of not, because I'm not here to bag players out, but I just don't see if there's a long-term future there for him. And finally, we get to the pencil, Henry Hustwaite, a man that I love. And unfortunately, I think it's going to be either love him somewhere else or love him wherever he ends up next. Because it looks like Connor is going to be our defensive midfielder. It's not going to be the pencil. 14 disposals, 3.5 tackles, 15 pressure acts. That's just not going to be getting the job done, I am afraid. And look, got subbed out last week tactically. Him and Nash don't work together in the same side. And I just think, like Ned Long, that we are going to give Nash the go-ahead, which sucks because his hands are super clean. He has got a lot of attributes that could come out maybe at a different system, but I'm not sure we're going to see the pencil again for the rest of the year. I wish him the best. This is one that I was excited that he fell so far in the draft, and unfortunately it hasn't quite come together. But it's going to be a D+ for me for the pencil. So there are all my grades, guys. What do you think? Comment below. Let me know. Don't forget to like the video if you've enjoyed it. Subscribe to join the Daz Talks Footy family. I hope that you have had an absolutely awesome day, and I will see you for the beginning of round 15. It's going to be a good round. I can feel it. You are an absolute star. Thank you for watching. See you next time.